Hey everyone, and welcome back to another explainer. Today, we are taking some seriously complex subjects and making them absolutely crystal clear for you. We're decoding the literal architecture of life on Earth. So if you're looking to completely ace your syllabus on Unit 2, Population and Community Analysis, well, you're exactly where you need to be. We're going to break down all the detailed information you need to know, going all the way from how a single tiger survives in the wild, right up to the massive, intricate webs that sustain our entire planet.
Here is our ultimate study roadmap for today. We're zooming from the macro scale of the Earth down to the nitty-gritty of species interaction. So we've got ecology and the biosphere, inside the ecosystem, population dynamics and growth, the drama of species interaction, community structure and roles, and finally, adaptation, evolution, and extinction. Let's just jump right in.
All right, Section 1. Ecology and the biosphere. Before we figure out who lives inside our ecological house, we have to understand the foundation itself. Okay, so let's start with the word itself, ecology. It actually comes from two Greek roots, oikos, which means home, and logos, which means study. Put them together, and literally, ecology is just the study of our home. A scientist named Ernst Haeckel coined this way back in 1866. And honestly, it's a pretty beautiful way to think about biology, isn't it? We're essentially just studying how the ultimate roommates, plants, animals, bugs, and us humans, how we all live together and depend on our shared environment. Now, nature is highly, highly organized. It scales up step by step. Let's use a tiger to map this out. We start with the smallest unit, a single organism, one tiger. Now, if we group together all the tigers living in Nepal's Chitwan National Park, we get a population. Okay, but tigers don't live alone, right? Throw in the deer they hunt, the birds in the canopy, all the other living things. Now you've got a community. Then we add in the non-living stuff, the soil, the rivers, the sunlight. That makes it an ecosystem. Zoom out, and a huge region of these specific forests forms a tropical biome. And finally, put all the biomes together, you get the entire biosphere, the Earth.
And just to put all of this into perspective, this home took an incredibly long time to build. The biosphere didn't just pop up overnight. We are talking 3.5 billion years ago, there was just simple bacteria. Then, fast forward to 500 million years ago, we finally get fish. Then amphibians and reptiles around 300 million years ago, followed by birds and mammals. And humans? We literally just showed up about 300,000 years ago. We are very, very late arrivals to a house that was already bustling with life.
Moving on to Section 2, inside the ecosystem. Let's talk about how energy flows and what actually limits the growth of these communities. So you've got food chains and food webs. A food chain is super simple. It's a linear, one-way path. Grass gets eaten by a grasshopper, which is eaten by a frog, then a snake, then an eagle. Straight line. But, as you probably guessed, nature is rarely that simple. For your exam prep, you really need to focus on the food web. Think about it. A mouse isn't just prey for a snake. It could be snatched up by an owl or maybe a fox. Food webs are these massive interconnected networks. And the main takeaway here? Food webs are highly stable. If one single link breaks in a simple food chain, the whole thing collapses. But a web can handle those shocks. Now, as all that energy moves through the web, scientists visualize it using ecological pyramids. There are a few types. You can count the actual number of organisms, that's a pyramid of number. Or you can weigh all that biological matter, that's a pyramid of biomass. But listen up, because here is a massive pro tip for your syllabus. The pyramid of energy, it is absolutely always upright, no exceptions. Why? Because energy naturally decreases at every single feeding level. You never get 100% of the energy from the thing you eat. Most of it is just lost as heat. So what stops populations from just growing and growing forever? Well, we hit limiting factors. And this brings us to a really strict rule of survival, Liebig's law of the minimum. This law basically says that growth depends on whatever nutrient is available in the smallest amount, completely ignoring the total resources. So picture a plant. It could have all the water and sunlight in the world, but if the soil is missing nitrogen, it's not going to grow. Period. It's a hard limit, working right alongside Blackman's law and Shelford's law of tolerance, which tell us that every single organism has a strict maximum and minimum limit for survival. All right, Section 3, Population Dynamics and Growth. Let's zoom in a bit and see how a single group, like a herd of deer, actually behaves. When we study a population, we look at density, how crowded it is, and dispersion, which is how individuals physically space themselves out. You'll typically see three main patterns here. Elephants, for example, travel in clumped groups for safety and raising their young. On the flip side, look at a tea plantation. It's uniform.
perfectly and evenly spaced out, usually because of human planting or sometimes fierce natural competition for resources. And then you have random dispersion, like wildflowers. They literally just spring up wherever the wind happens to drop their seeds. No pattern whatsoever.
Now, how do these populations actually grow? This is a classic exam comparison. You've got exponential growth, also known as the J-curve. This is what happens when resources are totally unlimited. The population just skyrockets infinitely. But in the real world, resources are limited, right? Which gives us logistic growth, or the S-curve. The population grows fast at first, but then it levels off because the environment just can't feed or house any more individuals. That crucial leveling off point? That's known as the environment's carrying capacity.
Section 4, the drama of species interaction. And yeah, it is literal drama. How do these different populations cope with each other every single day?
I love this breakdown because it systematically shows who wins and who loses in nature, using a simple plus, minus, or zero. Let's run through it. Mutualism is a total win-win, plus, like bees pollinating flowers while getting nectar. Commensalism is a plus zero. A bird nesting in a tree benefits, but the tree? It doesn't really care either way. Then you have predation, a clear plus-minus. The tiger gets a meal and the deer gets, well, eaten. Parasitism is pretty much the same plus-minus deal, like a tapeworm harming a human. And finally, amencellism. This is a minus zero, where one gets harmed and the other is totally unaffected, like a massive, towering tree blocking all the sunlight from a tiny plant struggling on the forest floor.
Moving on to Section 5, community structure and roles. Let's zoom out again and see how all these dramatic interactions build an actual community. Okay, this right here is a massive distinction for your syllabus, the difference between a habitat and a niche. The easiest way to remember this is address versus profession. A habitat is just an organism's address. It's the physical location, a river for a fish, a sand dune for a camel. But a niche, that is their profession. It's what they do for a living. A bee's niche isn't just the meadow. It's specifically the act of pollinating those flowers and collecting that nectar. It's their unique, functional job within the ecosystem.
And just like in human society, some professions are absolutely critical to keeping the whole system running. Enter the keystone species. In architecture, a keystone is that single central stone at the top of an arch that holds all the other stones in place. In biology, a keystone species might not have huge population numbers, but their impact is staggering. Think back to our Chitwan tiger. If you were to remove the tigers, the deer population would absolutely explode. They would overgraze and eat all the vegetation, and eventually the entire forest ecosystem would just collapse. That one predator holds the whole structure together.
Communities are really dynamic, especially around the edges. An ecotone is the exact boundary where two different ecosystems meet, like where a dense forest gradually turns into an open grassland. What happens here is something called the edge effect. Because species from both the forest side and the grassland side are mingling in this one overlapping zone, it becomes incredibly vibrant. In fact, an ecotone often boasts much higher biodiversity than the deep forest or the deep grassland alone. Nature loves a good border.
Finally, we've made it to Section 6, adaptation, evolution, and extinction. The architecture of life is amazing, but it is definitely not static.
Organisms survive by adapting. Now, heavy vocabulary alert here, but stick with me. We're just looking at a step-by-step journey of how things change. We start with echads. These are just temporary physical changes caused by the environment. Think of a plant growing short and stubby because it lives on a really windy hill. It's not genetic. But if we take a step further to ecotypes, now we are talking genetics. These are populations of the same species that have fundamentally adapted their DNA to different zones. Next is an ecocline, which is just a gradual physical change across a huge landscape, like trees getting steadily shorter the higher up a mountain you go. And finally, the ultimate change, speciation. This is when a population is isolated for so long and adapts so much that it permanently evolves into an entirely new species.
But here's the harsh reality. Adaptation takes time, and right now, for a lot of species, time is running out. Extinction is the permanent disappearance of a species, and today it's largely driven by habitat destruction, pollution, and climate change. Just like the dodo bird, once a species is gone, it is gone forever. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question to end this explainer on. We've seen how vital every organism's niche is. We know that everything is completely interconnected in these delicate food webs. So, what actually happens to the stability of our entire biosphere when the keystone species start to vanish?
It's definitely something to think about as you review these notes. Keep studying, focused learners, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.